back to the 1%. And they say, imagine the effect on our culture, particularly on the young, if the kind of fame and adulation bathing Lady Gaga attached to the more notable achievements of, say, Warren Buffett. Or if the moral praise showered on Mother Teresa went to someone like Lloyd Blankfein, who in guiding Goldman Sachs towards billions in profits has done infinitely more for mankind.
Right. Well, this is market fundamentalism. Just like America is now hiring al-Qaeda in Syria to make way for a pipeline for Saudi Arabia, then Forbes magazine points to a financial terrorist like Warren Buffett, who's in the securitization business, financialization business, who has done more to destroy the American economy than almost anyone except for Lloyd Blankfein. They've all been caught engaged in massive fraud. They've had to pay small civil fines as part of rigging the judicial system and the legal system with the money they make in this financialized Ponzi scheme. And Forbes magazine is a shameless promoter of market fundamentalism or market terrorism.
This is an article that's an opinion piece, a commentator, an outside commentator who posted this on there. He's an Ayn Rand fanatic. So he's looking at the profits, the so-called profits that Lloyd Blankfein has stolen from the rest of the population through fraudulent mortgage-backed securities, through front-running markets, through high-frequency trading. And he's saying that this is, in an absolute objectivist, fundamentalist way, that the profits are all that matters. And the fact that he stole it from you, from your granny, tough luck. That's capitalism in his version of it.
Right. Well, we've seen this with other fascist regimes. As the wealth confiscation gets more pronounced, those who are doing the stealing, whether it's the Nazis in the 30s or Warren Buffett in the 2013 period, they scapegoat the losers. So the losers are being scapegoated. I've already mentioned the black community in America is being imprisoned at record amounts. The prison population in America is the fastest growing population. The prison population in absolute terms is higher than any other country in the world. And that's Forbes is assisting in this scapegoating and pretty soon prisons become concentration camps and they become extermination camps. That's the final solution to the debt bomb created by the Federal Reserve Bank. Mark my words, you'll see it in America in the
Well, we have an amazing memo that was released today. It was covered on Infowars.com. It was written by Greg Palast. And the title of it is The Confidential Memo at the Heart of the Global Financial Crisis. And what he points out is that he got this memo sent to him from somebody. He says, when a little birdie dropped in the end game memo, is what he calls it, through my window, its content was so explosive, so sick, and just plain evil he couldn't believe it, but he actually did go through and verify it. And this is what's interesting about it. The players, the Treasury official playing the banker's secret endgame was Larry Summers. And of course, Larry Summers is Obama's choice to become chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve. And if the memo is authentic, he says, then Summers shouldn't be going to the Fed. He should be going to the prison. But he verified it as being authentic. And the interesting thing about this memo is that it is from Timothy Geithner, who was a leading player at the Federal Reserve in New York during the TARP fiasco and is now Treasury Secretary under Obama. And this is what the memo said. He said, as we enter the end game of the World Trade Organization financial services negotiation, I would believe it would be a good idea for you to touch base with CEOs. He sent this to Larry Summers, and he points out here that if Larry Summers had called him, that would have triggered, under U.S. law, a public law. So what he does is he puts the phone numbers of the people, these few bankers that he wants to get involved in there. Of course, one of them is the criminal John Corzine. And the whole point of this was the end game essentially was to deregulate the banks with Glass-Steagall and to allow them to create these financial derivative markets, which, as he points out, J.P. Morgan would soon after this memo have an $88 trillion pseudo security on their books because, of course, those derivatives are not worth that much money. They can claim that they're worth that much money, and then they go around to different countries and tell them that they need to be bailed out or else. And then once the countries do that, then they declare those countries financially insolvent, lower their credit ratings, and then take over their countries, as we've seen time and again. In Italy and in Greece, we see Goldman Sachs people being put in positions of power and taking out democratically elected leaders. On our final piece of news today, we have an update on the NSA spying scandal. that involved all the big internet companies. The Guardian reports that the NSA paid millions to cover PRISM compliance costs for tech companies. The NSA paid millions of dollars to cover the costs of major internet companies involved in the PRISM surveillance program after a court ruled that some of the agency's activities were unconstitutional. An NSA newsletter entry marked Top Secret, dated December 2012, discloses the huge cost that this entailed, and it said last year's problems resulted in multiple extensions to certifications expiration dates, which cost millions of dollars for PRISM providers to implement each successive extension. These are costs covered by something called a special source operation. And the disclosure that taxpayers' money was used to cover the company's compliance costs raises new questions over the relationship between Silicon Valley and the NSA. Since the existence of the program was first revealed by The Guardian and The Washington Post on June 6th, these internet companies have repeatedly denied all knowledge of it and insisted that they only handed over user data in response to specific legal requests from the authorities. Well, notice a few things about this. First of all, this was a ruling by the secret FISA court. Now, this is a court that has doesn't have two different sides arguing the case. There's no publication of their decisions, and yet they maintain that these decisions alter not only our law, but alter the Constitution, that they're setting precedents, but nobody sees these decisions. So, of course, nobody knew about what was going on. And we're told that there's oversight about what the NSA is doing. Well, clearly you can't oversee something that you don't know anything about. But it's even worse than that. Obama is telling us, blatantly lying to us, saying that there's not even any question about what's going on with the NSA.
At some point, does the technology outpace the laws that are in place and the protections that are in place? And do some of these systems end up being like a loaded gun out there that somebody at some future point could abuse? Because there are no allegations, and I am very confident, knowing the NSA and how they operate, that purposely somebody's out there trying to abuse this program or listen in on people's email.
You're confident in that?
I am confident in that.
Did you hear that? Obama said there's not even an allegation. There's been plenty of allegations. There have been allegations that the tech companies were in on this, and that's what this proves as well. It proves that these internet companies were involved from the beginning in this program. And for those of you who don't think this is a big issue, so maybe some Republicans who love the security state, notice that this is millions of dollars that are being spent on this. Maybe that'll get your attention.